Today, my guest is former WWE Superstar. He's one half of the Heart Throbs. You may remember him as Romeo Roselli. Giovanni, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on today. I greatly appreciate it. So, what made you want to get into professional wrestling and this crazy industry that a lot of people fall in love with very, very quickly?
Yeah, I was always a fan growing up, and as I got older, a lot of people stopped watching, but I kept watching. And I actually really was into photography for a certain amount of time, and I took pictures at wrestling shows and I sent them into various magazines and I got them published. And I thought at one point maybe that's what I wanted to do was be like a wrestling photographer. And that wasn't enough for me. And I was like, I don't think I want to be behind the camera. I want to be in front of the camera. But I was always just kind of grew up a big fan and just always wanted to be involved in the business in some way, shape, or form.
How was it easy or was it hard to pursue professional wrestling?
Um, so I was in college and I was working out in a gym and at our school gym, and I heard that Paul Roma was in the area, and he also had a cousin Alex Roma, and I ended up speaking with him. I heard he was a wrestler, so of course, if you want to be a wrestler, you go up to another wrestler and be like, "Hey, man, I want to be a wrestler." Um, and he told me about a wrestling school up in Massachusetts, and basically from there, I started going. I started training at a wrestling school in Massachusetts. The college I was going to was in Connecticut, so it wasn't too far. It was about a 2 hour drive, and I was off to the races from there.
What was your first impressions of getting into a professional wrestling ring?
Um, didn't know what to expect. Was interested to feel how the bumps would be and how hard it would be, or what would be hard, what would maybe come easy. But it was tough. I think my initial response to the question would be the timing was something that didn't really understand or appreciate until you're actually doing it, where you're trying to time somebody doing something and you're trying to catch them, or you need enough timing to go around in the ring, so when you turn he's right there, and a lot of placement with bodies, and timing was something that I think is underappreciated.
Was it harder than what you thought it would be getting into the ring?
Was it harder? No, I didn't expect it to be easy.
Hmm.
So I wouldn't say it was harder than I thought. Um, Probably, when you actually started putting matches together and you actually had to perform in front of a live crowd, that's probably when it got real, so to speak.
And when you finished training, did you stay in that general area when you were
Yeah, I
doing
was,
shows?
I lived in New York, but I was really a New England wrestler.
Hmm.
And then eventually I ended up moving down to Ohio Valley Wrestling um, in Louisville, Kentucky. Right before that, I actually got a job working at Titan Towers in Stamford, Connecticut, as in the live events department. Um, which is a very kind of unique avenue that I went down. But I loved wrestling.
Hmm.
I wanted to be a wrestler. I wanted to wrestle for WWE. I went to school in Connecticut, which was very close to Stamford, Connecticut. And I was like, well, what better way to get as close to WWE as possible than by working there? Um, so I applied for a job, and lo and behold, like I went for an interview, which was awesome because like just imagine being a fan and you get to go into Titan Towers that you've seen on TV for years and that you hear all this stuff about. I went in for a job interview and I actually got called back and they said you got the job. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And that's actually where I met Dr. Tom Prichard, who was head of developmental at the time. And Dr. Tom was great. And we ended up kind of being workout partners in the gym for a little bit. And eventually, I told him that I was an independent wrestler and that I had aspirations of taking this very far. But I didn't want to, I guess, blow my cover, so to speak, or just make it seem like there's a big mark in the building. And how many fans probably try to get into Titan Towers every day or try to get jobs. So I just tried to play it cool and professional and say, yeah, I'm doing a good job in the live events department. But just so I'm moonlighting as an independent wrestler on the weekends, and I would love to eventually, be a full-time wrestler one day, and then shortly after that, I ended up moving to Ohio Valley Wrestling. I was not contracted at the time. I just moved down there because I knew that's where I would eventually have to end up being anyway if I did get signed. So I said I just want to go down there, and they had a beginner class, an intermediate class, and then the advanced slash contract class. So I started in the beginner class and I worked my way up. I got a job waiting tables, and then I was starting from the bottom there.
What was your first initial thoughts of OVW?
Oh, it was how do I want to say it? It was, you know what? Let me take a step back because I actually forgot. They actually had an open tryout camp right before I moved down. And it was basically, you pay a certain amount of money and you get to work out in Ohio Valley Wrestling. I think it was for several days or a weekend, maybe like 3 days or something like that. You got to work in front of Jim Cornette. You got to meet Danny Davis. You got to, meet some of the contracted talent. So it's pretty intimidating, especially when you're not signed and you're still pretty new and you're coming up and you're like, this is the WWE developmental system. Like this is where mostly everybody goes through. And this is where Cena, Orton, Batista, Shelton, Charlie Haas, like everybody has gone through these doors. It's like, it was pretty intimidating. But at the same respect, you got to be confident in yourself and you got to be like, you know what? I belong here. And, you're not saying you're at all of those people's levels, but you have to say, you know what? I have a good work ethic and, I deserve a shot and I deserve to be here.
How did your tryout, your camp go that week?
It went great. It went great. I ended up doing a tryout match with Aaron Stevens. I still remember it. They had everybody who was in the tryout camp. They cut a promo beforehand. So I cut a promo. Aaron Stevens cut a promo on me. And then we had a nice little simple match. We did some drills, throughout the course of the couple days. I remember we went in the promo room just with Jim Cornette and we got to do a promo. I remember it was something along the lines of, you got about 60 seconds, and you're gonna be working Stone Cold Steve Austin in the Dallas Sportatorium. Think about it and give us something. And that was pretty cool to do a promo in front of Jim Cornette for the first time. And little did I know that just months later, Jim Cornette would be very influential in, my career.
How long were you in OVW before you got signed?
Um, Probably close to a year. Started in the beginner class, worked my way up to the intermediate class, I revolved my life around OVW,
Hmm.
and even though I wasn't contracted and I wasn't allowed to be in the advanced contract class, I would stay. I would watch every single show. I would attend every single house show. The non-televised live events that they would have on the weekends, where you got to set up the ring and just be in the crowd and not be on the card. I would still go, still attend. I would show them that I was serious and that I'd be willing to do whatever it took. And when I knew I was really getting somewhere when I was invited into the contract class without a contract, which was pretty rare, because obviously most of the class was signed to a contract. So I knew I was close. And then eventually I did get signed. Danny Davis, and I remember Aaron Stevens too. They called me into a kind of a corner of OVW, and they tried to bust my chops, and they tried to like call me out on something and just try to get me all nervous, like I did something wrong. And then they said, hey kid, you just got signed. And a lot that had to do with Tommy Dreamer as well. Tommy Dreamer was head of developmental at the time, and right before this, um, Stephanie McMahon and I think it was John Laurinaitis and maybe one or two road agents came down to OVW just to kind of scout and just to talk to us and just to see what talent was down there. This was once again before I was signed. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to work in front of them, and show them, hey, I remember that kid. He used to work in the live events department in the Titan Towers, and now he's wrestler in OVW. And that was actually kind of part of my promo, um, and cut a nice promo. I actually had some derogatory things to say about Stephanie McMahon in the promo because I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. And if nothing else, I'm going to show them that I got a set on me.
Hmm.
Um, and they can't fire me because you didn't hire me. And it actually earned quite a bit of amount of respect from Tommy Dreamer and the office in general, um, that I went out of my way and did that. Um, Shortly thereafter, there was a Raw TV taping in Cincinnati, Ohio, which is very close to Louisville. And Tommy Dreamer got myself and Antonio Thomas a dark match against Hurricane and Rosie. And we did our thing, and we got a lot of people talking. And then a couple days after that, I got Danny and Aaron Stevens cornered me and told me I was signed to a contract.
How was it working with the coaches down in OVW?
Oh, it was great. OVW's. I still look back on it and say, well, it was one of the best times, of my life. Um, at the time, Lance Storm was the head trainer, and you can't say enough good things about Lance Storm. Ask anybody who was down there when Lance was down there, and he's just such a great coach. He was serious when he needed to be. If I could be serious for a minute, I don't know if you got that.
Yeah.
Um, and he was also empathetic enough when somebody didn't feel well or somebody was hurt or something, someone had maybe a personal situation. Um, Al Snow ended up coming down, and we all know obviously Al Snow is the head there right now. Um, and all the coaches were great at the time. Even someone like Mike Bucci, Nova, would be running a lot of the classes as well. And he was great. I actually knew him a little bit from New Jersey, when he was working the New Jersey Indies, and I was just coming up as well. So it was nice to see him again down in Louisville, down in OVW. But yeah, all the coaches down there were great. The classes were great. They were fun. And I have very fond memories of OVW.
Did anything change once you were signed when it came to training?
You know, honestly, not too much because I was already on OVW TV. I was already in the contract class. I was already doing everything that I possibly could. So to that point, like not much changed other than, mentally, you're like, wow, I'm actually a signed contracted talent
Hmm.
now. And the fact that now, it was, it's funny how it's like, did anything change? Well, I'm saying nothing's changed, but on the same respect, a lot of things changed just more on a deeper level, because you have this contract now that's kind of hanging over your head that you want to earn and show that you're worthy of it, and also not stop there and not stop it being a contracted OVW talent, and keep climbing the ladder.
Did they know what they wanted to do with you during your time in OVW, or did you have to sort of pitch what you wanted to do? Was it like a collaboration?
That was the brainchild of Mr. James E. Cornette. And, he had this idea for a while for somebody, and he thought that myself and Antonio Thomas would be the one to do it because he said he came up to me one day and goes, all right, here's what I want you to do. You're gonna have a big red heart, broken heart on the back of your tights. You're gonna have big red lips in the front of your tights, and we're gonna call you the Heartbreakers, and we're gonna give you a black pimp called Mo Green, and it's gonna be Mo Green and the Heartbreakers. This is gonna be the greatest thing ever. And you're gonna come out with big feather boas, and that's a very bad Jim Cornette expression, by the way. But that's how it was kind of pitched to us. And at that point in my life, in my career, especially Jim Cornette's telling you this. Yeah, Jim, you want me to drink toilet water? I'll drink toilet water. Like what? Like whatever somebody asks you to do there, I say yes.
Hmm.
Um, so we were like, yeah, we'll make the best of it, and we're in Jim Cornette's hands. So that's how it kind of started. And one day, early on in my OVW days, he came up to me and goes, Romeo Roselli, that's what we're gonna call you. And I was like, okay, actually sounds pretty good. Yeah, Romeo Roselli. And stuck with me ever since. So I have Jim Cornette to thank for my ring name.
Once they put you guys together as a team, did you start doing more dark matches and house shows? And did you know when you were going to be called up?
Um, for OVW,
Yeah, like when you were
um,
going to the main roster.
to go to the main roster, no, no, not really. We were doing OVW TV tapings every week, and to our credit, we ended up being one of the hottest acts OVW has ever had. And I'm not just saying that to try to toot my own horn or say something that's not accurate. I mean, if you ask anybody seriously, um, during the time of our rundown there, they will tell you we were as hot of an act as anybody that's ever walked through those doors, and that includes all of those names that I mentioned in the past. And pretty proud of that. We were able to get that over,
Hmm.
that gimmick over, that Jim Cornette said, hey, here's what's going to happen. Um, um, but then we didn't have too much time.
Hmm.
Um, we got a call. I remember um, myself and Dolph Ziggler / Nick Nemeth. We had I think like 3 days off. I think there was like no house shows that day, that weekend. And I think we ended up driving. We said like, hey, let's take a little beach vacation somewhere. So we ended up driving to Florida from Louisville. Um, and we arrived in Florida, and I think it was like on a Friday morning or Friday afternoon. And then we got to the beach. I turn on my phone, and it's a message from Tommy Dreamer saying, "You guys are going to debut this Monday live from Madison Square Garden." And I was like, "Nick, I think we better turn around." And yeah, so basically there was no real heads up other than that.
What was it like debuting there?
At the Garden,
Hmm.
pretty cool. I mean, not many people can say they debuted at Madison Square Garden. Not many people could say they worked Madison Square
Hmm.
Garden. And at the time, I believe I was like 23 years old, or maybe, yeah, I was 23. Um, that's pretty young,
Hmm.
to say, yeah, I just performed at Madison Square Garden. Um, and I remember at the end of our segment, Antonio was starting to leave the ring, and I grabbed him. I said, "Just stay here." And the lights were off. They went to commercial break, and I said, "Just stay here. Just look around and like take it in. Like we're standing in the middle of a sold out Madison Square Garden right now, live on WWE Monday Night Raw." Um, so that was quite the moment. And before that, um, of all people, Hulk Hogan was on that show. And that was, I grew up in the 80s,
Hmm.
so of course Hogan was one of my guys. So the fact that I got to meet Hulk Hogan backstage, he introduced himself to me that, "Hi, I'm Terry. I'm Terry. Nice to meet you." Like, yeah, oh, nice to meet you too. Um, and the fact that that happened,
Hmm.
in Madison Square Garden, right before I was going to go out to make my WWE debut on Monday Night Raw. That was kind of a full circle moment too, where it's like, wow, I really, I really did it.
Did they have any plans for you guys once you were on the main roster, or was it just touch and go?
Honestly, I think it was a little more touch and go. I think it was just, I think it was a little after WrestleMania. So, after WrestleMania, they kind of, call some people up or try to freshen things up. So we just kind of, went with the flow, and, they wanted some things, different or changed. So we just kind of did the best we could with, what we had to work with, and who we had to work with, and, just being there, and, being the best employees we could be.
Was there any particular moments? You mentioned Hulk Hogan, you mentioned Madison Square Garden that stand out more than others during your main roster run.
Um, you know, I, I keep a lot of memories, like
Hmm.
physical memories. So I have every single show that we've done, every single opponent, um, every, you know, I've logged every state that we were at and we've been to, and every single one of them had, was special, in its own way. Not just saying it just to say it, but, the fact that, we were getting to travel around the world, um, as a WWE talent, was that in itself, was an amazing experience coming from, a humble little fan, wasn't very athletic, never stood out in high school, never, just a measly old wrestling fan that really loved wrestling, that ended up wanting to be a wrestler, that made his, dream come true.
Was there anything that you would have liked to have accomplished on the main roster that you didn't get to?
We had a lot of, not a lot, but we had some tag team championship matches, with Hurricane and Rosie, and, would have been nice to say, you were a tag team champion, but, it wasn't in the cards. And, to answer your question though, that obviously is
Hmm.
one that stands out and sticks out. But after our run there, I had a really nice run, and had a really fun time in Puerto Rico. working for Carlos Colon and World Wrestling Council over there for a couple months. I didn't just go down there for, usually it's like kind of like a weekend shot or a big show or something like that. But I stayed down there in Puerto Rico for quite some time, and I had a lot of fun down there. And then after that, I ended up working over in NWE in Italy, which is obviously Italian, so that's my home country. So the fact that I got to work, work in Italy, work in the same places where my dad grew up, and my father was born. That is nothing more special than that. And then, also just working on the indies, getting a chance to kind of headline those shows or, be in really big spots on those shows. Most notably with Northeast Wrestling. I got to work Roddy Piper, Booker T, Jerry Lawler, provided great opportunities for Northeast Wrestling, as well. So, all of these memories, stick out, things that I think of fondly.
So how has life been after WWE?
It's been fine. It's obviously, everybody wants to be there, for a long time, and everybody wants to be WWE champion, and maybe not everybody, but I mean, that's kind of, if you don't admit it, you still, I mean, you don't get in it to like, not be, on the top. But, I made the best of my situation afterwards, and that's also when I started to get into health and fitness training. I eventually went back to school. I got my master's degree in exercise science and health promotion. I do a lot of presentations. I do a lot of education. I do some work, with some colleges, some teaching. So, my life ended up just kind of taking me in another direction where I wasn't really expecting it to. But you just kind of, the wave came and I just kind of rode it out, and then it kind of took my life, in a completely different direction, becoming, a health and fitness, expert and trainer and presenter.
Do you have anything coming up that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, you may have heard. Yeah. So,
I've seen the article
um,
today.
yeah. So on Saturday, May 10th, it will be my final match, my retirement match, and I know that word gets thrown around a lot in wrestling. But it's at a very special building. It's at the building where I grew up watching wrestling. It's at the building where it made me a fan of wrestling. Um, Between a certain amount of time, more than a decade, probably closer to like 15 years. I never missed a show there. They would have wrestling there constantly. They would run WWF TV tapings from there. They would run house shows from there. And I just never missed a show there. And through all my travels and doing all this stuff and getting to work everywhere, for some reason, I just always missed when the show was there. I just wasn't on the card, or it was a different promotion or something. And that is the building that means the most to me. As weird as this sounds, working at Chester County Center on May 10th is going to be more special to me than working in Madison Square Garden. And for some people, they would be like, what are you talking about, dude? It's the Garden. But once again, I grew up in that building. And that building also hosted like baseball card shows and memorabilia shows and autograph signings and all this stuff that I would go to as a kid. And that was also the building where I said, I'm going to do that one day. So the fact that I get to do my retirement match at this building, which I've never wrestled in before, I can't think of a better place to have my final match than the place where I watched my first match. And to have my daughter, who's never seen me wrestle, being sitting in the crowd in the same seat that I used to sit in. Um, I can't write a better ending.
I don't think there is a more perfect ending.
Well, now I just got to deliver.
Where can people reach out to you at?
My website is just my full name, Giovanni Roselli, .com, and all my social media is just my full name, Giovanni Roselli. So Instagram is Giovanni Roselli, um, and Twitter's Giovanni Roselli or X, and Facebook is official Giovanni Roselli because I think Giovanni Roselli was taken. So it's official Giovanni Roselli. But I shouldn't be that hard to find. And the May 10th show is going to be pretty big. We have the Hardy Boys in action that night against Breezango, Tyler Breeze, and Fandango. We have Mickey James on the card, who's a former OVW alumni who I had a great time with down there, and in addition to everybody in OVW at my time. I mentioned Nick Nemeth, Dolph Ziggler, he was down there at the time, and we have Mick Foley on the card. We have the Boogeyman on the card. Boogeyman's also OVW alumni as well, and it's gonna be a great night, great show. We have some WWE ID guys, some up and coming stars that are on the Evolve show every week. Um, it's going to be top to bottom. Mustafa Ali's on the card. Jerry the King Lawler will be there. Tito Santana will be there. Kane will be there. Um, I'm sure I'm maybe leaving somebody out, but just by the list of those names, you could just imagine what the night's going to be like.
That's quite a show.
Yeah.
If you had any advice to give to anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
Good question. It would probably be, I'm a big cliche person, but for the most part, cliches are cliches because they're often true. I would say literally to enjoy the journey, because you never know when the journey will end or you never know where the journey will take you. And the wrestling business is a lot different now than it was when I was coming up, and it was a lot different 20 years before that compared to when I was coming up. So that's something that I know we always say, but the fact that now you know it is different, where you can just take a picture with the legend on the show and not come off like a mark, or always tiptoeing around something, because you're worried about what someone will say or do, or you get heat with somebody. Um, really like enjoy the journey. And I remember I asked Jim Cornette at an independent show before I went to my OVW tryout, before I went to, Dr. Tom, and before I worked for live events. I said, Jim, what advice would you give me? I want to be a wrestler. The old expression, so you want to be a wrestler. He just said, work as much as you can, wherever you can, wherever you can, and get as much experience as possible. And one day you'll look back, and I still look back, and the time I wrestled in a barn in front of 10 people in Tennessee. But you go through that stuff, and you grind, and you drive 10 hours for one show for, you know, $20 or $50 or whatever it is to wrestle in front of 50 people. You do it if you really love it. Now it's a lot different now, where it's just people get signed and they never had a match before, and then they're on TV and within a year. So if you could do that, then, God bless you, and you don't have to do the 10-hour car rides that we had to do, on a weekly basis. So I give a lot of weird kind of roundabout advice. But Jim Cornette's advice to me, I'll pass along, is work wherever you can, do whatever you can, and as much as you can, and also literally just enjoy the journey. Journal, like take pictures of things. Everyone's got their phone now. Everyone's, videoing and taking pictures of things anyway. But take pictures of things, journal things, like write down like, who you worked and, how much you got paid and where was the show and how many people were there. And, you'll look back and you'll be appreciative of all those memories that you're making. And, another cliche is, it's not the destination, it's the journey, but it's really true. Because, the journey that I took to get to a certain level, is something that I cherish. It was, working for the opportunity to earn a contract, was the part that built something inside me. I like to use the word perseverance. It's one of my favorite words in the English vocabulary. And I feel like if you have that perseverance, it could take you very far, not just in wrestling, but in life.
Mm-hmm. I just want to say thank you for taking the time out tonight. Thank you for what you've done for professional wrestling, what you continue to do, sir. It's truly been an honor to be able to speak with you tonight.
No, thanks for having me, and thanks for anybody who's watching this.
Good luck on the upcoming your retirement match there. I hope it's everything that you want it to be, sir.
Thanks, I hope so too.
If there's ever anything I can do, please feel free to reach out.